Jeremy Clarkson made $144 profit in his first year of farming. Everyone laughed. That farm is now worth $12.5 million. The brewery is doing $21.3 million a year. And when Clarkson dies, the government gets absolutely nothing. This was never just a farm. It is one of the most sophisticated property and media engines in modern Britain. Not in Mayfair, not in Knightsbridge, but in a drafty Cotswolds field disguised as a television program about a man who cannot reverse a tractor. And once you see the architecture underneath it, you will never look at British farmland the same way again. The year was 2008. The financial world was unraveling. Lehman Brothers had collapsed. Bankers were panicking. Sensible money was running toward anything that felt solid. Jeremy Clarkson moved his into soil. He paid $6 million for 1,000 acres of Cotswold limestone farmland. At the time, it looked eccentric. His friends probably thought he had lost the plot. His accountant may have needed a lie down. But Clarkson understood something the financial class had missed. Land in Britain does not just hold value, it quietly compounds. And if that land qualifies as commercial farmland, it carries one extraordinary advantage that separates it from almost every other asset available to a wealthy man in this country. Inheritance tax relief. That means the land can pass to heirs without HMRC taking a slice, provided it remains commercially farmed. In blunt terms, it is one of the last great legal advantages left to the British wealthy. And that is where the genius begins, because the farm does not need to be the profit center. Amazon is. Clarkson's farm became one of Prime Video's most watched British originals. Amazon reportedly pays him around $10 million to $12 million a year across his television commitments. Every broken tractor, every planting battle, every failed harvest, it all becomes content, and content becomes revenue. So the losses in the field are not fatal, they are useful. That is the part most people miss. The farm is real, the farming is real, the problems are real, but the pain is monetized with extraordinary efficiency. Caleb Cooper, the farm manager who was already working at Diddley Squat when Clarkson arrived, is proof of that reality. He is not a character invented in a boardroom. He is a genuine farmer doing genuine work. And his frustration when things go wrong feels real because it is real. That authenticity matters, because authentic failure is more compelling than managed success. Millions watch Clarkson's farm for exactly that reason. Things go wrong. Clarkson reacts badly. Caleb tells the truth. The audience keeps coming back because the whole thing feels alive. The farm shop was never part of some grand retail master plan. It was a rescue. In Clarkson's first year, he grew 40 tons of potatoes and discovered that supermarkets did not want a modest amount from an unknown supplier. So he opened a shed in a field and started selling directly. What followed was one of the strangest retail stories in recent British memory. People drove from London, from Manchester, from everywhere that had no obvious reason to be in the Cotswolds. They queued for vegetables, honey, and the feeling of standing inside the story they had watched on screen. The shop's assets went from £44,000 to £1.34 million within a year. Not because Clarkson is a natural retailer. He is not. It happened because he accidentally created a destination. The products mattered. The story mattered more. Cow juice, Hawkstone, local produce, sharp names, familiar chaos. Everything was wrapped in the same tone, slightly absurd, deeply British, and impossible to fake. Then came the council. West Oxfordshire District Council refused permission for a car park. They shut down the restaurant. They served enforcement notices on a farm track. On paper, they were regulating a rural business. In practice, they were providing some of the best free publicity Clarkson has ever had. That is the irony. Every refusal became drama. Every objection became an episode. Every setback became a reason for more viewers to tune in. The council thought it was applying pressure. It was actually writing story. And Clarkson knew it. A farming friend had suggested early on that the planning fight would make brilliant television. He was right. The audience did not just want to see Clarkson farm. They wanted to see him fight the people telling him how he could farm. Then the beer business arrived. In Series 2, Clarkson grew barley that did not meet brewing standards. On its own, that would have been a disappointment. On screen, it became a new commercial engine. Hawkstone launched from that failure and turned into a serious brand. By 2025, it had reached $21.3 million in annual revenue, up from $7.8 million the year before. It is now stocked in around 2,000 pubs. The brewery employs 53 people. That is not a side hustle. That is a business. The clever part is that the farm helps supply the beer, the television promotes the beer, and the beer pays for the system. A failed barley harvest became a premium product with national reach. The negative thing became the valuable thing. That is one of the most counterintuitive truths in the whole story. The failure is the product. And then there is the pub. Clarkson spent $1 million buying and renovating the Farmer's Dog. It now employs 146 people. The food operation is not designed to be a cash machine. It is designed to showcase British produce, pull in traffic, and support the wider brand. British beef, British suppliers, British identity, British television. Everything points back to the same machine. The pub is not the prize, it is the stage. And then there is Lisa Hogan, who quietly understood the thing many people still miss. The 16-mile sourcing rule forced the team to find local suppliers they never would have discovered otherwise. What looked like a restriction became a network. That is not just good branding. That is business architecture. The council tried to narrow the operation. It widened it. They thought they had leverage. They were providing the narrative. That line explains almost everything about the whole empire. The setbacks are not separate from the success. They are the success. Clarkson did not build a farm that happened to become famous. He built a story that happened to include a farm. And the story keeps expanding. The farm is worth $12.5 million. The brewery is bringing in $21.3 million a year. The television deal is worth $10 million to $12 million annually. The shop became a destination. The pub became a magnet. The planning fight became a content engine. Each part feeds the next one. That is why this is not a farm in the normal sense. It is a flywheel. And once the flywheel starts turning, it becomes very hard to stop. The deeper truth is simple. Clarkson understood that people do not only pay for products, they pay for meaning. They pay for narrative. They pay for proximity to something that feels real. That is why the queues formed. That is why the beer sold. That is why the show worked. You cannot manufacture that. You can only find it and then point a camera at it. Jeremy Clarkson did not just buy land. He bought leverage. He bought narrative. He bought a tax-efficient appreciating asset. And he built a machine around it that turns chaos into value. That is why the farm made $144 profit in year one and still became a multi-million-pound empire. Because the $144 was never the point. The point was the architecture underneath it. And now that you see it, you cannot unsee it. If you've enjoyed this story, do subscribe and tap the notification bell. We cover stories like this every week, and there is always another layer hiding underneath the obvious one. Did you ever visit Diddley Squat? And if you did, what was the queue like? Thank you, as always, for watching.